Hello, welcome back to the Michael Sisco show. Let me know in the comments if my audio is good. I know sometimes I have issues in the beginning when I'm solo. Wonder how many people will get at noon on a weekday. Not normally when I stream, but wanted to do a bonus stream this week. Yeah, because I'm still streaming. I know I stream Thursday nights and Sunday evenings. Tomorrow we are still streaming with Stephen Ignoramus. He's got a nice little YouTube channel. I met him in DC at the MAGA rally and had a few beers with him before everything went crazy. Oh, cool. Got a nice little audience. Well, big news today is my birthday, so happy birthday to me. I am 33, so it's time for me to get married and have babies. Okay, so I don't even want to do the dating thing. Just send in applications if you're Orthodox and under 27, because I need I'm trying to have like 20 kids, so. We need you to be young. Just kidding. But anyways, I want to talk today. I started the impetus was trying to go to church last week, and the stricter restrictions in the state that I live in, and my only option, basically, I was trying to go to vigil. Because I had a rare Saturday evening. I don't normally have Saturday evenings free. And I wanted to go to vigil. So I signed up. And because of the new restrictions, I was the odd man out. So I ended up driving an hour and a half to go to where I knew that I could go. So I'm angry, and I make this petition. And let's just say the words kind of reflected my anger in the first edition of this petition. But after consulting with several priests, I did do some revisions. The language was a bit strong. I was kind of emphasizing demands and rights. And I edited that to appeal more to the Orthodox ethos and church tradition. Thank you, Dark Traveler. Good to have you today. Haven't seen you on the chat in the chats for a while, so good to have you back. Anyways, we are going to be talking about. Let me do hop on a screen share quick, and we will we'll read this. I don't think there's any audio to share for this, but thank you, Alex Y. Thank you for the happy birthday wishes. Oh, and by the way, Entropy is not really working for some reason today. But if you would, I don't even know how to get to the petition. Here we go. I am monetized now, believe it or not. So you can actually send super chats. You can send super chats on Facebook, or at least you should have that option. Let me know if I can't really see. I'm just going to read this real quick. So this is my updated petition. So I changed from "we demand" to "we strongly request the resumption of divine liturgy and vigil without restriction. We Orthodox Christian lay people desire to attend all Orthodox services regardless of the local and state restrictions imposed upon the Church. Keeping with the Orthodox ethos and tradition of the Church, we strongly oppose the fencing off of icons, the mandatory use of masks, and capacity restrictions. Sign-up sheets are not necessary. Enough is enough. We understand that many parishes comply due to the threat of fines and imprisonment and where were they? And punishment from local authorities. We understand and sympathize. However, seeing that the Constitution of the United States and its First Amendment guarantee our right to worship, and this has been upheld by the Supreme Court, we believe it is time to stand up, confess the faith, and resist the unjust laws. We will offer our financial and moral support to parishes that keep and maintain the Orthodox tradition and remain open without restriction, and provide full access to the life of the Church during this time of crisis, when we need it most. On the other hand, we cannot continue to pledge our support in tithe and donate to parishes that continue to operate under these novel restrictions, which are indeed contrary to the Lord's will, commandments, and holy tradition. We also entreat our bishops and priests to stand up and push back. We ask that our Orthodox dioceses file lawsuits against the local authorities. We also request that our bishops vocally object to mandatory vaccines and travel restrictions for those who refuse to be vaccinated. Beside the fact that the COVID-19 vaccine was created using aborted baby cell lines, it is now clear that new, unprecedented technology will be utilized, which may be very harmful to human beings. These and other factors make it impossible for conscientious Orthodox Christians to accept the new vaccine. So, well, Dark Traveler, I appreciate I appreciate that you've been watching. Pumpkin, I'm glad you consulted with the priest. Humility is so important. Yeah, I do realize my language was probably a little too strong in the first edition of that. And Demetrios, happy birthday. Thank you. Yeah, I also suggested making a list of parishes to tithe to. But then I kind of realized that that's a bad idea, because then I'm basically making a list for the government to say, hey, look, here are parishes not listening, not following guidelines, and that's obviously not a good idea. I don't want to get them in trouble. But I have gotten, I've apparently caused quite a stir with this, and I've gotten some text messages from people I haven't heard from in years. Google test, why are you moving to West Virginia? Well, I don't really want to say where yet, but I obviously I want to get out of the cities before the chaos starts. We should all get out of the cities, to be frank. Out of the control of the globalist elites, to the best that we can. But anyways, I get a text message from someone I haven't heard from in at least a year, from my old parish. And occasionally I get texts that start like this. It says, "You may not care. I just want to let you know that I strongly disagree with your petition." And so whenever I get a message that starts out with, "You may not care," or "I know you don't care, but here's my opinion," I know that I'm about to get lectured. Not really. It's not going to be, no, Ray, it was not Kathy Zoo. No. But I know that I'm going to get basically just a lecture, not really a discussion. It's not like, "Hey, Michael, I wanted to talk about about my concerns with this petition of yours," which I did get texts like that. And they were from priests who were supportive of the cause, but had some recommendations of some suggestions that I change how I go about doing it. And I thought that they were good suggestions, and so I changed the wording a little bit. And we will get into some of the old wording, because it was preserved for posterity by my good friend Giacomo Sanfilippo, which I forgot to actually put that article up. We'll pull it up. But anyways, so this guy, he makes some points. I'm not going to say his name. I ended up blocking him because I was at coffee hour, at a parish that still, does things normal. And I just wasn't dealing with the headache. Brandon Diebert, did you include the recent legal victories in the petition for churches and synagogues in New York, citing the precedents of lockdowns being unconstitutional? Well, I did have those in mind, Brandon, but the problem is, and I did cite it. I said a recent constitutional decision. The problem is most people are interpreting that as not being universal. Like, it's not like a mandate to universally open the parishes, right? It's saying, basically, it's saying you have to treat the churches equally and not give favorable treatment to other types of gatherings or businesses, right? So New York City, which is where this was applicable, where this was happening, right? And to our shame as Orthodox, it was the Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn and the Orthodox Jews who filed the lawsuit, and we were nowhere to be seen, right? Basically, the restrictions to the churches were stricter than, say, the liquor store, or I don't know this. I'm just giving examples, or the strip clubs, or some other business, right? Where restrictions were more lax than for the church. So yeah, it was kind of relative. I don't think that it's relative. What they're talking about is relatively restrictive to New York, but it's not a broad statement that you can't shut down, you can't put restrictions on churches, right? They're saying that the restriction on the church cannot be more restrictive than your restrictions on other things. So that's what the Supreme Court is saying. They're saying that you can't treat the church, you can't be more strict on the restrictions to church than, say, a restaurant, for instance, right? But anyways, back to these text messages. My good friend that I haven't heard from in over a year. The first thing he says is, not a single person has showed me the chapter or verse to support this. Well, as an Orthodox Christian, maybe we don't ascribe the sola scriptura. We have an entire holy tradition that is encompassed not just by scripture alone, right? And then he says this sort of thing causes schism. And you know what? I'm really not trying to cause schism here. And if I was, I would not be appealing to the bishops to do the right thing. If I was trying to cause schism, I would be encouraging the clergy to be disobedient to their bishops. That's not what I'm doing. I am calling on the bishops to do the right thing. Literally appealing to my bishops, to the Synod of Canonical Bishops in North America. And then he says two things come to his mind from actual tradition and scripture. A flexibility when it comes to divine law, except the most dire commandments such as murder, adultery, or schism. Okay. And a divine injunction to obey the state when the state is unjust. He did not provide me with any examples for this, so I don't quite know where he was going. But and I know we have Eric template. That ship sailed long ago. Well, I guess if you're an old calendarist, I can see why you would say that. Which I think you are. Not a dig. I understand where you're coming from. But schism is not what I'm going for. I want he says this petition, along with your argument, implies that the bishops who comply with government regulation are untrustworthy and not true to our Orthodox tradition, and this leads to schism. I would disagree. I disagree with that statement. But that logic doesn't really make sense. So where are you going to apply that logic to? And what is unjust? Let's say some bishops or the Orthodox bishops, let's say they are mandating that that our priests grant communion to unrepentant homosexuals. Would you use that same logic there? Must we obey the state in their order that, let's say that they're saying we can't discriminate against unrepentant homosexuals when it comes to communion? Is that an unjust? How far do you take this logic down that road? But I did want to read. Max E. Miller says, we don't believe our bishops are infallible, and that's why we can disagree. I agree. They are not infallible. Yeah. But anyways, I do want to read this. Orthodox Reflections put out a really good article. And so I wanted to read that. And I never even heard of this blog or website until they tweeted at me some support for the petition that I have. But maybe I won't read the whole thing. It's kind of long. But maybe I will. They said, COVID lockdowns prove new Christian leaders are needed. In a welcome victory for religious liberty, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled 5-4 to grant temporary injunctive relief to the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn. The diocese had requested the injunction on the basis that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's executive order on COVID-19 restrictions had been unfairly applied towards houses of worship. Attendance at services had been capped at 10 persons in a red zone, a designation awarded by the state on the basis of the perceived severity of COVID-19 cases in the area. Writing as a member of the majority, Neil Gorsuch blasted the executive order in it uncharacteristically for a Scottish member, harsh language. Well, good on Gorsuch, man. Government is not free to disregard the First Amendment in times of crisis. At a minimum, that amendment prohibits government officials from treating religious exercises worse than comparable secular activities, unless they are pursuing a compelling interest and using the least restrictive means available. At the same time, the governor has chosen to impose no capacity restrictions on certain businesses he considers essential, and it turns out that the businesses the governor considers essential include hardware stores, acupuncturists, and liquor stores, bicycle repair shops, certain signage companies, accountants, lawyers, and insurance agents are all essential too. So at least according to the governor, it may be unsafe to go to church, but it is always fine to pick up another bottle of wine, shop for a new bike, or spend the afternoon exploring your distal points and meridians. Who knew public health would so perfectly align with secular convenience? Indeed, the governor is remarkably frank about this in his judgment. Laundry and liquor, travel and tools are all essential, while traditional religious exercises are not. That is exactly the kind of discrimination the First Amendment forbids. So even the Constitution has taken a holiday during this pandemic. It cannot become a sabbatical. So good on Gorsuch for that. Let's see. I don't want to. This is quite a lengthy article. I don't want to read everything. Let me check the chats real quick. Yeah, the governor who said God didn't do this, we did this. This sentiment echoes what Abbot Tryphon wrote in a recent article entitled "The Church is the Essential Institution." One would expect all Christian leaders, Roman Catholic and Orthodox, to seize every opportunity to defend the essential nature of Christian worship. Sadly, that expectation is wrong in too many cases. It seems many Christian bishops embrace Cufid hysteria to a point that they refuse to stand for religious liberty. Good examples are the recent statements of Archbishop I can't even say his name, but it's not worth saying because he's a heretic. Of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, Metropolitan Tikhon of the Orthodox Church in America, and Pope Francis, the pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church. None of these men said anything about the essential nature of Christian worship, nor did they even support the right of their faithful to congregate in their own private homes. Let's look at what these successors to the apostles had to say at a time in November 2020 when religious liberty in America needed a secular judge applying a secular constitution at the behest of a Roman Catholic bishop to defend it. That's a good point. Why is it requiring a secular judge to defend our right to congregate and receive the Eucharist as opposed to, our bishops, the apostolic successors of the apostles? I tweeted this out the other day. Our ancestors in the faith faced death, literally, to go to liturgy. And our leaders are afraid of fines and maybe imprisonment. But our ancestors literally died for the faith. And this is where we are. We're afraid of as you can see here, a virus with a survival rate that is minimal. The survival rate is extremely high, even in the highest risk categories. And this is where we are. We're afraid of that. And we shouldn't even be afraid of death. We're Orthodox. Come on. So, and it talks about archbishops. He issued a video called "Wear a Mask." We're not going to get into the whole mask thing. I think I've talked about that before as well. But he states this virus, he's speaking out due to the upsurge in the pandemic, and then assures the viewers that this virus is not a hoax. It is a real and present danger. Emil just answered some question. Amelia, why is religion considered non-essential while alcohol is? That's wrong. Good question, Amelia. Good question. John Pro, this is an absolute failure of leadership. It is, and that's why we have the petition, which we have the link in the description. So please sign it. Please sign it when you get a chance and share. Trying to get to 500 by the end of the day. We are at 300 something now, last I checked. With all due respect to His Eminence, but if 9 months into a pandemic, you must use your position as Archbishop to assure viewers that COVID-19 is a real crisis, then that fact alone assures you that it isn't. The lockdowns and mask mandates are affecting hundreds of millions of people, but the virus is not. We are certain that the virus is real enough, but there are actually two separate hoaxes being perpetuated. The first is the hysterical fear of a virus with a 99.95% survival rate under the age of 70. If we were losing people in our lives, if parishes were flooded with funerals, if our businesses were decimated by calling people in sick, in other words, if we could see all of this with our own eyes, then you wouldn't need to keep telling us how afraid we are supposed to be. When we argue over the seriousness of COVID-19, the arguments in favor of hysteria always turn to reported case numbers, news articles about flooded ICUs, usually somewhere very far away from us, and total reported deaths. Personal experience rarely comes into the conversation. The situation reminds us of Soviet news reports of bumper grain crops, even as citizens queued in long lines for meager rations to stave off starvation. Who are we going to believe, official sources or your lying eyes? The second hoax is that we can do anything to stop a virus. Here is a bishop of the church, a man who should possess the utmost humility, endorsing the idea that we can fight a virus by shutting down the economy and making everyone wear masks. This is the ultimate rejection of his office. God gave us all an immune system, which can more than handle this virus if we keep it strong. But to believe that we can stop a virus from spreading is hubris of the highest order. Remember, 15 days to flatten the curve. At the beginning, at least, the public health officials told the truth, more or less. Based on bogus modeling data, politicians were afraid the number of patients would overwhelm hospitals. They wanted to slow the rate of infection to mitigate that risk. The goal was never to reduce the total number of cases. The goal was to spread them out over a long time. No one at the beginning of the pandemic dared to make the case that we could end, stop, or even limit the spread of a virus short of herd immunity naturally occurring or via a vaccine or combined. 9 months later, lockdowns and masks are still with us with no end in sight, and our moral betters keep telling us that this time, unlike last time, if we just adhere to the rules, we can limit the spread, which would logically mean we can reduce the total number of cases. That this is a hoax on a grand scale, one which tens of millions of disgruntled Americans recognize as a hoax, despite the official assurances to the contrary. It is sad when the average Christian has more discernment and more trust in God than an Orthodox bishop. But Elpidophoros is sadly not alone. Metropolitan Tikhon also wants you to know that we must be very afraid of the virus, that the government is here to help. If you love your neighbor, then you have a duty to comply. I don't even want to read what he says. But, it's our duty to stop the spread of the virus. Spirit of self-sacrifice. Okay. Born out of love of our neighbor. Yeah, they fail to mention that, the treatment for the disease is pretty good at this point, 9 months later, and the fatality rate is super low. So when a politician cancels your Thanksgiving under threat of arrest, it is just a series of measures. Sounds so innocent, doesn't it? The government can tell you how many people can gather in your home. The government can keep you confined to your home. The government can stop you from seeing elderly relatives who are living in isolation and depression. The government can tell you to wear masks even in your own home. The government can shut down your business or place of employment. The government can even shut down or severely restrict your church's ability to worship God. But out of love for your neighbor, we must comply. It's what Jesus would do. And Pope Francis basically echoed the same sentiments. Yeah. Blah, 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 common good. But bad governments respect our individual rights in which people die. Responsible governments shut down their economies to fight a virus with a 99.95% survival rate. So if governments are acting for the common good, then there are evidently no limits to their authority. The Vicar of Christ, who is also an expert in epidemiology, says, shut up and comply. The governments had to impose restrictions to save the least fortunate, and you are bad people for protesting. But only if you are protesting against lockdowns. If you are protesting as part of BLM Antifa or celebrating a Biden presidency, then it appears that you are all good according to everyone who matters. Not all protests are equally susceptible to spreading COVID. Someone please let the Bishop of Brooklyn know that. For the common good, we have to let Cuomo close all of his churches. Let's check the comments again. Yeah, well, the shared screen isn't clear. Sorry about that. I don't know what to do about that, Ray. You're going to have to let me actually post a link to this article so you guys can read it. This is a good website, too. Support it if you can. hey, you know what? Denying access to the Eucharist is not, and just all the sacraments of the church, that's not loving your neighbor. It's not even loving your flock. Dark Traveler told you we are all in the same boat. Fighting between East and West is counterproductive when we have our own clergy openly against us. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really down. Debates are cool, but I don't really consider. I don't know what you're referencing, but no, I don't want to. I try and build coalitions with my Catholic allies, but debating theology, I mean, I guess that's a whole nother. It's a whole nother thing. Yeah, Radix Verum. I look forward to being on your show tomorrow. Actually, I think I got to study up so that I can look like I'm intelligent, not actually intelligent. But yeah, flatten the curve. What happened to that? Right. Anyways, let me just scroll down. We're through this. Yeah, 9 months in, the bishops have learned nothing. But I mean, it's pretty obvious. What they're doing is they're using the number of cases to scare everybody, but the number of the fatality rate has gone down. The severity of disease have drastically decreased because of the treatment. And basically, like he's making the point here, they're almost changing what it means to be Christian. They're basically saying that there's virtue in following these progressive leaders, and that abiding by their rules is the virtue and what a good Christian should do, which is completely foreign to Christian historical experience, and we're about to get into that here in a minute. Yeah, this is a good point here. Among Christians, the Great Reset is provoking talk of the Antichrist. So each day, more technology is unveiled that we fear will be mandatory for us to even participate in society. Mandatory vaccines, immunity passports, digital IDs, implantable nanotechnology, a cashless society, and more. Roman Catholic Archbishop Vigano struck a nerve with his warnings about the use of technology to track and control us. Orthodox monks and bishops around the world are also discussing the current situation in light of eschatology, the consensus being that the ramp-up phase to the appearance of the satanic world order. But while many of the faithful are in a state of prayerful worry about these developments, many bishops just go about their business as usual. They either ignore the developing technological and political landscape or endorse it, as has the Pope. So basically, our bishops are cooperating with the stakeholders who want to basically subjugate us in this new world order, while our bishops are being complicit in helping to consolidate the power and sovereignty into these new these new powers that want to basically run the world globally, be the global powers. Doorman, 1,000 years to flatten the curves, fellas. Dark Traveler says, in general statement, there's a never-ending mudslinging contest going on. That's true. Yeah. Obey the secular state in denying the Eucharist sounds legit to me. It's not legit, bro. It's not. So let's see. But I mean this, we can harken back to not that far long ago, the Soviet Union. So what I will question these people who, and I understand there are people who are genuinely scared, actually think that it is the Christian. They think that they're saving people from death. Getting a phone call in the middle of a stream. Do I answer it? No. Well, if it's important, calling them back. Max Miller says, saving ourselves from a virus is more important than saving our soul. The atheistic Eucharist is a vaccine and big pharma pills. Yeah, that's exactly it. So how do we remember the bishops who cooperated? This is my question to anyone, thinking that, especially to my friend who was texting me saying that we still have an obligation to obey these unjust laws, right? So what do we think of bishops how do we remember bishops who cooperated with the Soviet authorities? Contrast them with the ones who didn't. How do we remember them? The clergy who disobeyed the Soviet regime and were martyred for it. We revere them as saints, right? But people like Bishop Sergius, I think we call that Sergianism. We remember him as a heretic. And after Emperor Trajan, we had 200 years basically until Saint Constantine in the Roman Empire, where we suffered systematic persecution, and going to church was illegal. Gathering for worship was outlawed by the state, but we still did it. So, I might lose monetization for this, but let's watch this quick little YouTube
On
video.
the 23rd of February 303, Emperor Diocletian ordered the destruction of the new church in the ancient city of Nicomedia, marking the start of the great persecution of Christians. Diocletian was declared emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire in 284. Within 2 decades, he'd established a powerful tetrarchy of 4 rulers who began to restore order and wealth to an empire that had suffered a range of internal and external threats throughout the previous century. Christians were perceived by many in traditional Roman society to be a threat to the established order. Not only was the religion seen as a foreign cult, it was built on a monotheistic belief that directly undermined traditional Roman religion. Contemporary sources say that Diocletian himself was broadly tolerant of Christians in the early years of his rule, and indicate that it was actually the Tetrarch Galerius who encouraged the introduction of persecutory policies. On the 23rd of February 303, Diocletian ordered that the newly built church in Nicomedia in modern Turkey should be destroyed, along with its scriptures. The following day, he published the first of 4 edicts that went on to strip Christians of their legal rights and the freedom to assemble to worship, and later demanded that they conform to established Roman religious practices, such as performing sacrifices to the gods. The persecutions continued for 8 years, during which time thousands of Christians were killed for their faith. Nevertheless, the religion survived, and shortly after Diocletian's death in 311, Galerius himself issued the Edict of Toleration, which legalized Christianity in the Eastern Empire. Constantine and Licinius went further in 313, and, following the former's emergence as sole emperor in 324, Christianity quickly began to spread across the empire.
All right. So, not that we needed that little history lesson, but let's see. Doorman 360 says, we have an obligation to obey the state only to the point where it doesn't trample on God's law. That is where we must cease our obedience. Father Eric Template, Saint Tikhon, pray to God for us. Yes. Yeah. And what I guess what I don't understand is how some people don't view, literally restricting us from communing as trampling on God's law. I mean, the same elites that are pushing these lockdowns on us with no religious exemptions, they're the ones asking you to renounce your faith by adopting the progressive religion And I guess that's a lot of people they don't seem to be putting two and two together. So even though the state is not explicitly telling us not to be Christian, they're not telling us we can't be Christian, we can't be Orthodox, you can't be this religion or that religion. What they are telling us is we can't hold Christian beliefs. Why don't you try and go on social media and espouse your Orthodox views on gay marriage? See what happens. See if you have a job, if your employer finds it. So, I mean, this is even more insidious than what Diocletian was happening during Diocletian's time. Diocletian just said, you can't be Christian. You have to sacrifice to the gods. And if you don't, we're going to kill you, right? Our government is more insidious than that. It's, oh yeah, you be Christian, but you can't believe in traditional marriage. And if you do, you got to keep that to yourself. Your faith has to be something that you practice. And they've been saying this for years. Your faith has to be something that you practice privately in your home, not something that should be in our faces in the public. You can't have, there's been controversy over, what do you call those things? The Christmas scenes. Yeah. I can't even remember. I'm having a brain fart, but you can't have Christian images in public without some sort of controversy. And so now COVID-19 is just how you can't see this as being just a tool for them to finally get us to be at home and in private, right? And they don't want us to be Christian. They want us to adopt. We can be Christian by name insofar as we adopt modern progressive beliefs and liberalism. That's the extent to which we're allowed Christian. Aaron Sassiana, as someone who is not Orthodox but is really interested and only has found out about the church during the pandemic, I can't currently go to my local Orthodox church because it is closed. And this is another thing that the bishops, honestly, like, they should be considering this as well. I recently had a viewer of the show email me, lives in the same area that I do. I couldn't get it. Like, do you know how embarrassing it is? Like, yeah, come to church with me. Oh wait. Let's go watch the miracle of the liturgy. The most serious. Oh, are they choddling? Am I super choppy right now? I'm probably talking too fast, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that if I was looking into that right now, and I couldn't even find a church that was open, I would imagine that would be a stumbling block for sure. Iona, interesting. She says her church in New York. I'm in New York and church is open. Well, you guys did just have that Supreme Court case. But here in Maryland, not so good. Not so good. And I don't want to say any names of any parishes, but I know some good parishes in New York who are not complying with the rules and weren't even before. DBJ, has anyone realized that they don't mess with Islam and they don't tell them what to do? Well, that's because they know that that the Christians won't respond in the same manner in which, we do, right? We aren't going to blow ourselves up. So we're not going to kill innocent people. And that's also why the Romans actually targeted the Christians more so than the Jews, because they knew that the Christians weren't going to wage war against them. So the Christians were easy scapegoats for the Romans. Evangelos, I believe it was St. John Maximovich who said that what started east will end in the west. The fruits of 1917 are alive and well. Chinese communism is coming to the west. Well, isn't that the truth? God save us. Julia McLean, happy birthday. Michael, thank you. Send the super chat. Send super chats. I don't know if they work on. Are the super chat, is the function available on YouTube yet? My Entropy is not working today, so not even opening. It just bothers me. You know, countless have died for our faith and put their lives on the line just to have you, just to receive the Eucharist. And, you know, we can't handle fines, right? And I want to read, you know, we always get, well, one of the reputations that is often cited is Saint Mary of Egypt. And she went off into the desert and she only received the Eucharist once. So that's, everyone's, well, this is like, we're like Saint Mary of Egypt now. Like, well, no, we're not. And first of all, that's not an example of the ideal for us to be following. We're supposed to be gathering together as frequently as we can for the Eucharist. Not isolated in our homes, being subverted to globo homo elites. That, you know, Christianity is Orthodoxy, we are a community. But I think that we should understand exactly what we're giving up. DBJ, do we need to start running for political office? Yes. In fact, go on saintsedwardmedia.com, click on the book club tab, and see a little something about that. But I'm reading this book called The Way of the Spirit by Elder Archimandrite Emilianos of Simona Petra, which is a monastery on Mount Athos. And I conveniently had this portion on the divine liturgy and what happens when we go to liturgy, and it seems applicable. It just really paints a picture of what we're giving up, what we are just saying, okay, we don't have to do that. And I think it even kind of messes up that Saint Mary of Egypt narrative as well. My beloved children, how marvelous was today's gospel lesson. It's one we've heard many times and experienced continuously, especially during the celebration of the Divine Liturgy. As we journey through the desert life, it is only natural that our thirst should draw us to the liturgy, because the Divine Liturgy is a sumptuous table set in the open air, such as that which the Lord has spread before us today. What did we hear in the Gospel? Jesus gathered the people together. Why? Because the apostles told him they have nothing to eat. This is Mark 6:36 and Matthew 14:15. Thousands of people who had come from every town to see Jesus would have gone hungry. And so the Lord had them sit down in groups on the ground in order to satisfy their souls. They had gone forth into the wilderness to see Jesus. He gathered them all together. The Divine Liturgy, my beloved, is precisely this going forth. It is a movement from one place to another, which we enact continuously. It is also a sitting down in the open in order to eat. It is first of all a kind of exodus, but from where? The people mentioned in the Gospel went forth from their towns and villages, but we come forth from ourselves, as well as from the places in which we live. We leave one kind of place and come to another, which is different from the one we left. And who among us, upon entering a church, Who does not sense that there is something special here? Who does not know that to come here means to leave all else behind, including Kufid? And this can be seen by the fact that if any inappropriate thought enters our mind while we're here, we immediately want to dismiss it. And even if we're unable to, we recognize it as something foreign, something that has intruded into the space of our soul, something that has slipped past our guard and entered into us. We enter the church then, when we go forth from ourselves in power, in substance, and in truth, leaving behind all our sins, our inclinations, and our aspirations. To enter the church means to leave outside all those things that make up our life in the world. That which exists is God, but that which is ours and which alone belongs to us is our sin, our self-will, and our desire. Apart from God, the self is something non-existent, even though it is and remains the creation of his hands, the breath of his first blessing. When we enter the church, we leave behind not simply the things we see, but even the things for which we hope, because the latter, in particular, occupy a central place in our lives. Even though the things we hope for are not currently in our hands, we live as if they already were, feeling them intensely as if we could run our fingers through them, lay hold of them, and possess them in general. The intensity of our feelings about such things assumes the character of an actual experience. We must leave that behind along with all that we see. And what we see is everything we encounter in the course of the day, things seen by the eyes of the body as well as those of the soul, which are much more perceptive. The things we see are all the things we experience, which stirs us up, unsettle us, occupy our minds, give us pleasure, and lift our spirits. When our eyes fall upon them, they elevate us, but only to a place within the visible world, never beyond it. And leaving behind everything we see, we come forth from that which constitutes our place of exile. This is the new exodus undertaken by the children of God every time they assemble and unite themselves to Christ in the sacred space of the church. Having left everything behind, where do we find ourselves? In the open air, as befits people close to God. Why do I say in the open air? Because looking around the church, we feel that we're standing in heaven, and heaven cannot be considered a closed space. And this is why Christ chose the desert as a place for prayer. Notice that connection with the desert. And where did St. Mary of Egypt go? The desert, right? So she went to a place for prayer. So precisely because its endless expanses and tremendous openness symbolize heaven itself, the desert, moreover, stands in contrast to the world. It contains no worldly pleasure. It gives you no earthly delight, and it offers you no fleshly repose. Heaven is something like that. And so, to me, Saint Mary, when in her story, it says that she repented and she went off into the desert. So she retreated to a place of prayer. Not she stayed at home, isolated in her home, in a closed space, in obedience to civil authorities who are who are progressives, who want us to be gay and want us to be committing sodomy, and they don't want us to be Christian. But it's virtuous for us to obey them when we should be casting aside all of those cares and entering into the church. Iona says, yes, St. Mary repented, confessed many years in the desert before receiving communion, but her circumstances were different. We are fortunate now and given many chances to repent and receive communion often as we should, because we never know when our life ends, which could be any moment. Very true. Very true. Aaron Sassiana. It has been a bit frustrating as someone interested in orthodoxy, but I just decided to keep doing what I'm doing for now. Read the early fathers, and I ordered a prayer rope from a Russian monastery. Well, good for you. I would say, don't let any of this discourage you from pursuing the faith. I know it's tough. Despite the many failings of our bishops, no matter what they do, they cannot change the fact that orthodoxy and the Orthodox Church is the fullness of the faith and is the true church, despite all of their human failings. And God willing, that with a little bit of pressure from us, that they will do the right thing and, allow us to live the fullness of the faith again and through the sacraments of the church. I don't see any super chat. Any questions from anybody? As I think that's pretty much all I have for you. Other than, oh wait, hang on. Brave the World. I told her I'd give her a shout out. But Julia actually co-authored this book, Thank God for Bitcoin, The Creation, Corruption, and Redemption of Money. So check that out on Amazon. But she did co-author this book. So go support our fellow Orthodox sister in Christ and get that. Also, I encourage you to read the life of St. George. He was one of the, he's a great martyr of the church during the time of Diocletian. And read that and tell me if you think that he would support these lockdowns. I highly doubt. AJ says, didn't the Supreme Court already rule that the governors can't close the churches? No, that's not exactly what happened. We addressed it already earlier in the show. But the article that I shared also addresses that. It was just that they said there can't be unequal treatment to the churches. So you can't have a stronger restriction on a church than you do other things like a liquor store. Yes, we must pray for our bishops and we must pray for our enemies. So, but yeah, these I don't know if I made, I'm probably not the best apologist for church tradition, like our good friends over like Ubi Petrus and Jay Dyer, and that's normally I stay in the realm of politics, but something just seems off to me when we are shutting our churches down at the whim of the globalist elites who don't want us to be Christian or anti-Christ, and these are who are. We have our ancestors in Christ died so that they risked their lives to attend liturgy, and here we are afraid of fines and a virus that really isn't that deadly. Do you think any of the this is a dolphin? nice emoji. Do you think any of the jurisdictions in America will leave the church by the end of this? I hope not. I am not advocating for, I don't think anything like this I don't think this warrants a schism. But God will judge these bishops when the day of judgment comes. They will have to answer for keeping us from the Eucharist. We shouldn't have to sign up to go to church. That's just ridiculous. No, I don't want us. I'm not encouraging schism here. I don't think that we should be. I don't think any of the jurisdictions should cease communion with anybody else over this. No, what we need to do is we need to open the churches, and that's all I'm asking. Sign the petition. Let's let the bishops know. Hey, look. the Eucharist is important for us. We don't believe that our access to it should be restricted other than due preparation. So if I've, gone to confession, I've done my pre-communion prayers, and I've done the fast, those are the only things that should restrict my access to the Eucharist. If I'm not in a state of repentance, if I haven't been baptized or chrismated, that's what should be restricted. The only restriction to the chalice are the not whether the civic authorities say. We have things backwards. It is the civic authorities that should be looking to the church as the higher authority, not the other way around. And that's the bottom line. And that's all I really have for you guys. I will actually be streaming again tomorrow night with Stephen Ignoramus. We're going to be covering the election, back to politics, back to real politics, the election fraud. And I do want to say, I know it's my birthday and everything, but what I'm grateful for on my birthday, I do think I have the best fans. I think that those of you who watch my show, I've seen the chats of other shows, of similar shows, and I think that you guys are the absolute best, and I appreciate you watching every stream. I see you guys, and you're very interactive. I like that. Keep it up. They won't let you super chat. Probably been demonetized again for this episode. So, yeah, Valiant one, probably true, but that's why you should subscribe to the D Live channel, which is in the link as well. We eventually I will only be on D Live. Thank you everyone for the happy birthday wishes. Dolphins, I just found the Orthodox in Dialogue article. I meant to actually pull it up, but I forgot. What he said was pretty funny. He actually said that nobody knows who I am, but this is the second article he's written about me. The other one was, to be fair, was years ago. Max Miller, yes, we do have a PayPal. I can throw that up in the chats real quick. Hang on, let me find the link. We do have a PayPal. See how fast it wants to. The browser wants to work. Hang on, I'm pulling up the. We also have a Patreon too. Oh wow, this is while I wait for that PayPal to come up. No, Joe, this is not my real house. That's a green screen. DBJ, happy birthday, buddy. Thanks to Jay and Witkoff for helping me with making the transition to the Orthodox Church. Glory to God. That's awesome. Good to see that we're people are listening and here we go. Hang on, almost to the PayPal link. I should probably have that at the ready. Hang tight, trying to find it. Oh, here we go. Here we go. All right. Got the PayPal link up there. Valiant One says I was talking about Jesus coming very soon. No man knows the day nor the hour, so I will say it definitely the signs of the time seems like there's you know, seems like we are entering a very apocalyptic type of situation with the mandatory vaccines, cashless society, all that. That's definitely seems very, but we don't necessarily know that either. This might be kind of a precursor to the Antichrist. Might not actually be the fruition of that. But anyways, that's all I have for you. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you tomorrow night with Steve Ignoramus.